On May 22, 2025, at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Tennessee, Oscar Franklin Smith, an American man convicted of murder, faced his death sentence. But what made this case particularly noteworthy? It was the unexpected twists in the execution process, from mysterious flaws in the lethal injection preparation that led to a postponement, to his final moments on the gurney, where he steadfastly maintained his innocence. In today's video, we'll explore his last meal, his final words before his life ended, and delve into what drove a father and husband down a path of heinous crime, taking the lives of his ex-wife and her 2 children. Was it just a straightforward murder, or were there unresolved complexities behind it? This case is a heartbreaking tragedy revolving around 3 innocent lives who had normal, hopeful lives but were tragically connected by Oscar Franklin Smith's brutal actions. The primary victim was Judy Roberts Smith, Oscar's 35-year-old ex-wife. Judy was a hardworking mother and woman who worked at a Waffle House restaurant. On that fateful day, she suffered an incredibly painful death, shot in the neck and stabbed multiple times, demonstrating the unimaginable brutality of the assailant. Along with Judy were her 2 sons, Chad Burnett, 13, and Jason Burnett, 16. Chad and Jason were teenagers full of energy and dreams. Their passing was not just the loss of individuals, but also the profound sorrow of a family and an entire community. Chad was shot in the left eye, upper chest, and left torso. Jason, Chad's older brother, was stabbed in the neck and abdomen. These details not only show the savagery of the act, but also that the perpetrator acted cruelly and mercilessly towards the children. All of them were senselessly deprived of their lives on October 8, 1989 in Nashville, Tennessee. Their story is a painful reminder of the terrible consequences of violence. Oscar Franklin Smith, born on March 25, 1950 in Ohio, was the 4th of 7 children. His family later moved to Robertson County, Tennessee, where he grew up and began his life. In 1985, Smith married Judith Lynn Roberts, a Waffle House waitress who had 2 sons from a previous relationship. The couple later had twins, but their relationship quickly deteriorated, leading to their separation in June 1989. At the time of the horrific crime, Smith had a suspicious motive. He had purchased life insurance policies for all 3 victims. This raised suspicions of a premeditated murder plan. Smith's co-workers testified that he frequently threatened to kill Judy at least 12 times between June and August 1989, just months before the crime occurred. More alarmingly, one co-worker revealed that Smith had threatened to kill both Chad and Jason because he believed Judy treated her 2 stepsons better than their own twins. These testimonies paint a picture of a volatile, jealous, and violent man. Were psychological instability and personal motives the main factors shaping his criminal path, turning a father into a cold-blooded killer? On the afternoon of October 1, 1989, in Nashville, Tennessee, a horrific series of crimes unfolded, leaving a dark mark on the state's judicial history. Oscar Franklin Smith, with extreme coldness and brutality, infiltrated the home of his ex-wife, Judy Roberts Smith. The victim's last moments were heartbreakingly recounted by witnesses. While the victim's family tried to call the police, Chad, the 13-year-old boy, was clearly heard desperately screaming, "Frank, no," indicating a terrible struggle before Smith acted. Judy Roberts Smith, the perpetrator's ex-wife, was the first victim to face his brutality. She was shot in the neck and stabbed multiple times, a slow and agonizing death. Smith then proceeded to take the lives of Judy's 2 sons, Chad Burnett and Jason Burnett. Chad was shot in the left eye, upper chest, and left torso, indicating a direct and malicious attack. Jason, Chad's older brother, also met a tragic fate, being stabbed in the neck and abdomen. The brutality with which the perpetrator acted against the victims, especially the children, caused widespread shock. At the scene, investigators recovered an ice pick, but the .22 caliber revolver and the knife, the main murder weapons, were never found. The disappearance of these weapons made the case even more mysterious and complex. This brutal and decisive act showed the perpetrator's coldness and determination. What drove Oscar Smith, once a husband and stepfather, to continue this path of violence, savagely taking the lives of an entire family? Immediately after the horrific crime, the investigation proceeded urgently. Crime scene investigators discovered crucial evidence: a bloody handprint on the bedsheet next to Judy Smith's body. What was unique about this handprint was that it matched Oscar Smith's missing 2 fingers, a distinctive identifying feature. This evidence quickly linked Smith to the crime, making him the #1 suspect. Although Smith later hired a fingerprint expert to refute this evidence, arguing that the investigator had made numerous errors and could not definitively identify the fingerprint, the handprint evidence and the testimonies from Smith's co-workers about his prior threats strongly corroborated the accusations against him. The investigation led to Oscar Franklin Smith's arrest. On July 26, 1990, less than a year after the crime, Smith was sentenced to death by a jury in Davidson County. This was a swift verdict reflecting the clarity of the evidence and the brutal nature of the crime. His execution was scheduled to be carried out by electric chair on December 3, 1990, but was postponed so that Smith could appeal his conviction, initiating a decades-long legal process. But did Oscar Smith think he could forever evade justice, or was he preparing for a protracted legal battle? The trial of Oscar Franklin Smith took place in Davidson County, Tennessee, on charges of especially aggravated murder. The prosecutor convincingly presented the brutality of the crime and provided evidence of Smith's history of violent threats against the victims. They emphasized the perpetrator's clear calculation and motive, including the purchase of life insurance policies for the victims, to prove that the crime was premeditated. Smith's defense attempted to invoke mitigating circumstances, possibly related to his psychological state or difficult circumstances, but it was not enough to change the jury's verdict. On July 26, 1990, the jury sentenced Oscar Franklin Smith to death. This was a harsh sentence, reflecting public outrage and the seriousness of the crime. After his conviction, Oscar Smith spent decades on death row, filing numerous appeals and requests for review. In March 2022, Smith's lawyers from the Baker Botts law firm filed a clemency petition with Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, arguing that his sentence should be commuted to life without parole. This clemency petition was based on newly found DNA evidence on a murder weapon, possibly the ice pick, and argued that the DNA evidence indicates an identified assailant, not Mr. Smith, used a bloody murder weapon found at the crime scene to murder Mr. Smith's family. However, on April 11, 2022, a Tennessee court refused to reopen his case. On April 14, 2022, Smith asked the Tennessee Supreme Court to vacate his execution date, but on April 18, 2022, the Tennessee Supreme Court declined to hear the appeal. On April 19, 2022, Governor Bill Lee also stated that he would not intervene in Smith's execution. Did this conviction and the lengthy legal developments truly bring justice to the victims and their families? On May 22, 2025, at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution, Oscar Franklin Smith, 75, faced his final fate by lethal injection. This was a long-awaited day for death penalty advocates and an emotional moment for the victims' families. Smith was the first of 4 Tennessee inmates scheduled for execution in 2025. Before his execution, Smith was asked to choose his preferred method of execution, lethal injection or electric chair, but he refused, meaning he would be executed by Tennessee's default method, lethal injection. Smith's last meal was simple but recorded by the press: a double cheeseburger, tater tots, and apple pie with vanilla ice cream. When asked for his last words, Oscar Franklin Smith made a defiant and resolute statement. He said, "Somebody needs to tell the governor that the justice system is not working," and then clearly repeated, "I am not guilty of this," before losing consciousness. His time of death was announced as 10:47 a.m. These final words remain controversial and provoke much thought about unresolved issues in the case. Did Oscar Franklin Smith's death truly bring closure and comfort to the victims' families, or will his questions continue to haunt them? The case of Oscar Franklin Smith concludes with the perpetrator's death, but it leaves countless profound questions and indelible scars on those who remain. What led Oscar Franklin Smith, a husband and father, to become such a brutal killer? This case is a painful reminder of the unbearable pain that domestic violence causes, not only for those directly involved, but also for society as a whole. Judy's brother and sister, who tragically lost their loved ones, expressed that they would continue to carry their sorrow, and this is a reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence, a social phenomenon observed in countless other families. The case also sparked intense debate about the death penalty in the United States. Smith's execution was once postponed due to flaws in the lethal injection preparation, highlighting the complexity and potential issues in the execution process. Smith's assertion of innocence until his last breath, especially with new DNA evidence presented, although rejected by the court, has led many to reflect on the accuracy and irreversibility of death penalty verdicts. Is the justice system perfect, and can errors ever occur when human lives are on the line? The Oscar Franklin Smith case is a prime example of the tragedies that violence can cause and the ethical questions society faces when applying the highest penalty. This case reminds us of the cost of violence, society's role in preventing crime, and the legal system's responsibility in ensuring justice. What do you think about Oscar Franklin Smith's fate, the death penalty, and the lessons this tragic story leaves us with?